Chapter 1 Survival Guide to Camp Crystal Lake by MiloszGuzowski. It's 1979. The weather's getting warm really fast, meaning skin's out and hair in the wind. But let's not get too frisky, especially when crossing the borders of Camp Crystal Lake. We've heard the legend. We've seen his classic hockey mask. But how long will you last before you witness the legend in person? Let's get one thing straight. If you think that the locals are a cover for safety, guess again. They won't bother interacting with someone dumb enough to visit Camp Crystal Lake. Hitchhiking is also out of the question, unless you want to run into Pamela Flores herself. Once you get to the camp, try and keep your hands off your new beau. You don't want to trigger a visit by Pamela. She has a grudge against horny teens since they were the ones who let her son drown. I know, it sounds stupid, but trust me, bumping uglies isn't worth angering the slasher and his mom. You might want to wait until you are safely off campgrounds. Last but not least, don't go near the water. Jason clearly has some fear of the lake, seeing that he drowned in it as a child. But given that Jason either survived the drowning or more likely given the increasingly supernatural behavior, the lake somehow granting him immortality. It is something he can't live without, so I do have to warn you again, stay away from Camp Crystal Lake. Chapter 2 The Backstory of Michael Myers. Michael Audrey Myers was born on October 19th, 1957. He had an older sister named Judith and a younger sister. The family resided in a two-story house at 45 Lankin Lane in the suburban town of Haydenville, Illinois. On October 31st, 1963, a 6-year-old Michael dressed as a clown for Halloween and watched his sister and her boyfriend kissing before going upstairs to, taking a night out of the kitchen drawer and waiting for Judith's boyfriend to leave. Michael then snuck up the stairs and repeatedly stabbed his sister to death. After watching her die, he left the house only to be discovered by his astonished parents, who had just returned home. Michael was sent to Smiths Grove, Warren County for his crime, where he will remain until his 21st birthday, until he could be tried as an adult. At Smiths Grove, Michael received psychiatric treatment from Dr. Sam Loomis. Upon spending time with the boy, Loomis concluded that it was a hopeless case, that Michael Myers had no humanity left. He pleaded his case that Myers be moved to a more secure facility. But his superiors refused to listen and ordered that he remains in the adequate Smiths Grove. In 1965, Michael's parents were killed in a car accident, and his little sister was adopted by the Strode family, who renamed her Laurie. The Strodes brought Laurie to visit Michael at Smiths Grove on at least one occasion when she was still a little girl. On October 30th, 1978, the 21-year-old Michael Myers destroyed his room at Smiths Grove and carved the word "sister" on his door before breaking out. He also released the other patients from their room. At the same time, Dr. Loomis and Nurse Marion Chambers were arriving at the facility to transfer Myers for his court hearing. Noticing the patients roaming around outside the hospital, Loomis got out of the car to investigate as Michael attacked Marion and sped away in the station wagon. As he drove across Illinois, Michael stopped to murder a truck driver to steal his overalls. Traveling to Haydenville, Michael returned to his childhood home. The next day on Halloween, a teenage Laurie Strode dropped off a key at the Myers house for her realtor father and was immediately recognized by her brother. Michael proceeded to stalk her and her friends Annie and Linda throughout the afternoon. He also stole Judith's gravestone from the local cemetery and broke into Nicole's hardware to acquire knives, rope, and a white Halloween mask. Meanwhile, Dr. Loomis has followed Michael to Haddonfield and warned Town Sheriff Leigh Brackett of the danger he posed. That night, as Laurie and Annie were babysitting across the street from each other, Michael watched them from the shadows. He murdered Annie first, strangling her in the car as she left to meet her boyfriend before slitting her throat. Later, Linda and her boyfriend Bob showed up, only to fall victim to Michael as well. Worried about her missing friends, Laurie crossed the street to investigate, only to find Annie's body arranged under Judith Meyer's grave, and Linda and Bob hiding in the closets. Michael lunged at his sister, catching her on the arm with his knife, and she ran for help. Michael followed her across the street, and Laurie was forced to stab him with both a knitting needle and his own knife. As Michael rose from the apparent death to resume his attack on Laurie, Dr. Loomis appeared and shot him 6 times, causing him to fall off the balcony. When Loomis went to check the body, Michael had vanished. The injured Michael fled into the back alleys of Haddonfield. He killed a teenager, Alice Martin, before breaking into the elementary school and scrawling Samham onto the chalkboard in blood. As news of the murder spread, chaos erupted in Haddonfield, with citizens rioting and teenager Ben Tramer being killed in the confusion. Learning Laurie's location from a news report, Michael resumed his search for her at Haddonfield Memorial Hospital, where she had been taken for her shoulder wound. Michael systematically murdered Laurie's protectors at the hospital, including a security guard, a paramedic, doctor, and 4 nurses. Meanwhile, Dr. Loomis, who's continuing his search for Myers with the help of the Haddonfield police, was told by Marion Chambers of Michael's siblings' connection to Laurie Strode. Loomis, realizing why Michael had come home, tracked him down to the hospital and saved Laurie's life a second time. Loomis and Laurie worked together to cause an explosion in the hospital operating room, which engulfed both Loomis and Michael. Chapter 3: Terror on Elm Street. If you're a Freddy Krueger fan, you know the Dream Demon himself is a mystery all on his own. In this chapter, let's kick back a bit and chat about his iconic films, with the help of Horror Film Wiki, of course. Amanda Krueger was a nun working in a hospital when she became pregnant with a son who was named Freddy. Later in his life, he became a murderer in Springwood, notorious for killing children. The media labeled him the Springwood Slasher. He was apprehended but later released because of a technicality. According to the original film, it was because someone didn't sign the search warrant in the appropriate place. The parents of the children tracked him down and found him in the boiler room where he took his victims. The parents poured gas into the room and set him on fire, which caused his melted-like facial features. In A Nightmare on Elm Street, through A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, Krueger was referred to as an urban legend. The Elm Street parents remained tight-lipped about the events of the decade before, especially now that their children were teenagers. In the closing months of 1981, the children of Springwood, in particular those teens whose parents had formed the mob that killed Krueger, began dying in particular ways as they slept. The parents often ignored or denied the pleas of their terrified children, who told tales of a mysterious man named Freddy who was terrorizing them in their dreams. Krueger met 3 notable female adversaries in the period before Freddy's death, the final nightmare. Nancy Thompson. Nancy, whose family moved into Krueger's old home, was the first of the Elm Street children to learn about his past and the first to vanquish him. Nancy returned in A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, only to be killed by Freddy, who had taken the physical form of her father as a disguise. Kristen Parker. Kristen was a girl with the ability to bring people into her dreams. In A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, she, along with the last surviving Elm Street children, battled Freddy in the dream world using self-imaginative dream powers. Kristen used her natural gift of pulling others into her dream as a way of the group to battle Freddy at the same time. She was killed by Freddy, in a Nightmare on Elm Street form, the Dream Master, by being tossed into his boiler and burnt to death. Alice Johnson. Alice gained Kristen's powers and the dream powers of her friends to become a Dream Master. In A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, Alice removed the souls of Krueger, gained over the years, and left him powerless. A year later, Alice became pregnant and Krueger started using the dreams of her unborn child to kill again in A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. Alice vanquished Freddy a second time with the help of Krueger's mother, Amanda. After Krueger was contained, Alice moved away from Springwood before he escaped and caused the events in Freddy's death, the final nightmare. The only male to ever be a victim of Krueger and main protagonist of any of the films, who at the end defeats Krueger, is Jesse Walsh in A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. Here, Freddy tries to enter the real world through Jesse's body. With the help of his girlfriend Lisa Welber, Jesse regains control over himself and banishes Freddy back to the dream world. After a decade of systematically slaughtering all of the children of Springwood in their dreams, the town was shown to be under Freddy's influence in Freddy's Dead, the Final Nightmare. By absorbing the souls of his victims, Freddy was now powerful enough to blur the lines between dreams and reality. The remaining adults were kept in a mass psychosis after their children had been murdered. When there was no one left to kill, Freddy sought to leave Springwood, hoping to continue his murder spree in another town full of more children. Only one person could arrange for this to happen: his daughter, Catherine Krueger. Krueger used what was left of his supernatural powers to find his daughter, who was now an adult named Maggie Burroughs, and was working as a counselor to troubled teenagers in another city. Since her mother's death, Maggie was raised by adoptive parents and had suppressed the disturbing memories of her early childhood. After catching up with Maggie, Krueger attempted to convince her to do his bidding. She proved, though, that a compulsion of her murder was not hereditary, and instead schemed with Doc, her co-worker, to help destroy Krueger. After pulling him out of her dream and into reality, Maggie stabbed Krueger in the abdomen with his own glove and then shoved a pipe bomb into Krueger's chest, effectively killing him and releasing the dream demons that had given him his power.